He was considered to be the craziest emperor that ruled Rome. And believe me, that's up against some stiff competition. Yes, I'm looking at you, Nero. This is the absurd history of Caligula. Caligula was a Roman emperor that ruled between 37 and 41 AD. His childhood isn't a happy story. His mother and two brothers were captured and killed by the ruthless emperor Tiberius. Tiberius mistrusted Caligula's whole family. Fearing repercussions if he killed the whole family, Tiberius decided to spare Caligula and raise him as his own son. Roman writers also suspect that Tiberius poisoned Caligula's father. Caligula quickly became popular among the Roman soldiers. He liked to dress up as one of them and march alongside the army. They even named him after the Roman soldier's shoe, which is called the Caliga. When a famous soothsayer named Thrasyllus of Mendes predicted that Caligula had, and I quote this, no more chance of becoming the emperor than of riding a horse across the Bay of Baiae, it did not bother Caligula. Instead, he ordered a whole fleet of ships to form a floating bridge across the 2 kilometers wide bay. Then he proceeded to ride his favorite horse across the bay, while wearing the breastplate of Alexander the Great. Well, you mentioned his favorite horse. Indeed I did. Caligula had a horse which he absolutely adored. It was called Incitatus. During his year as emperor, Incitatus lived in a marble stable, complete with servants, ate grain mixed with oats and gold flakes, and was dressed in the color purple. The color purple was a very expensive color at the time, only reserved for high officials. Caligula even tried to make his horse consul of the Roman Senate. During his rule as emperor, Caligula began to test the limits of his power. He started to see himself as a god and dressed up as Jupiter or even Venus. His servants would see Caligula at night standing on the balcony of his palace, looking at the moon and speaking with the gods. There was one thing that Caligula wanted but did not have, and that was a military triumph. His predecessors, Tiberius and Augustus, both had expanded the Roman Empire by a considerable amount. Not only did Caligula want his own successful campaign, but he also wanted to surpass those of Tiberius and Augustus. Therefore, his eye was set on Britannia. He marched with his army towards the coast, and having arrived there, he claimed that Neptune, the god of the sea, had offended him. He ordered his army to charge the sea and literally stab it with their swords. After that, he ordered the army to collect seashells to represent spoils of war. The only reason the army obeyed these orders was because they were promised extra payment for their glorious victory over the sea. Back in Rome, however, Caligula wanted his own triumph, but he realized that a couple of seashells wouldn't quite cut it. So he took Gallic slaves and dressed them up as Germanic prisoners and paraded them through the city. A little fact: during a Roman triumph, the emperor would be mounted on a chariot. Behind him stood a slave. The slave would constantly whisper in the ears of the emperor that even though the emperor was victorious over his enemies, he was still a man. Caligula probably did not have such a slave on his chariot. After that, one thing was sure: Caligula's reign was at an end. Having spent all the money of Rome on parties, costumes and meals for his horse, left him without support of the army. Caligula's death could be considered a classic death for a Roman emperor. He was beheaded by the Praetorian Guard. The Praetorian Guard were the personal bodyguard of the emperor. Their motto: protect and serve. It's more like protect and sever, right? And that brings us to the end of the absurd history of Caligula.